Thanks for getting settled back in after lunch. So we've got the other two text selections that we're going to dive into. The one was around the writing portion, and the other is around the essay. So this next one is that first passage, A Life in Traffic, with the writing test questions, and obviously 1 through 11 all fit to it. So these next two strategies, and actually the one just prior, are new ones for me. And this one is especially new, but this builds off the work of Jeff Anderson. And we've had Jeff Anderson here a lot at the Kent ISD, so if you've had a chance to come and get a chance to see him in action, and if not, I'll be referencing his materials. But we're going to get into this idea of the mentor sentence. And the mentor sentence, we're going to use it exclusively for one aspect, but it's something that's about, basically, as we might know, a mentor text. You're going to use the mentor sentence, and that's going to be to pull out grammar or punctuation or editing or revisionist type pieces. And so we're going to go through that process of taking that mentor sentence strategy. The resource here is the Notable Sentences blog. It's a blog that he references where folks find really good sentences that model difficult aspects of grammar or punctuation, and they go and post them there. I went there myself. I found it somewhat difficult, but I didn't spend a lot of time there. So, but it's where Jeff Anderson references, so I figure I got to dig deeper. But it's a website that he suggested if you wanted to find sentences, to find those hard to find examples of different components in language. So what we're going to do is I want you to go ahead and read this sentence. And I want you to think, what's wrong with this sentence? Because there's an error here, and we're just having you consider. Okay, so what are some things that you notice? Just go ahead and throw out what are some things that you notice about the sentence in general. All right, so I heard two conjunctions. Okay.
It has
Two independent clauses. Compound object, it's a compound sentence. And if I were in the classroom, I might be charting these things. So the whole idea is you show a sentence, potentially with an error. And if you know Jeff, you know this is a little bit out of his comfort zone, and he says so in here as well. He typically tries to, stepping out of the teaching role for a moment, he typically tries to show something that models the use versus the non-use. But for this particular aspect, he does go with the non-use. So considering that, all right, with the comma and the compound sentence, I want you to look at these sentences. So the first sentence here, every day was a happy day, and every night was peaceful. That's from E.B. White, Charlotte's Web. The second sentence, Celia says you're in shock, but I think you're just lazy. All right, so Nancy Farmer's The House of the Scorpion. And the last one, Hiccup leapt out of the way, but the sharp point of the blade pierced his shirt and tore a neat slice out of it. From the How to Be a Pirate book. So what I want you to do now is I want you to see what you notice about these sentences. So what are some things that you're noticing in these sentences? Knowing these are sentences that are used by authors modeling some facet of language. All right, so there's a comma kind of in the middle. And again, you would chart such things down. And we would have our chart from our prior sentence separate, and you'd start a new chart, and we'd be jotting things down.
The comma comes before the conjunction 3 out of 4 times.
Say that again, sorry?
The comma comes before the conjunction 3 out of 4 times.
Okay, so the comma is coming before the conjunction 3 out of the 4 times. Very, very good language, students.
Hiccup is an odd name.
Hiccup is an odd name. Celia? Okay. Go ahead and turn to an elbow partner and look at all 3 sentences and see what are some things that you're noticing if you consider all 3 sentences and what they might be modeling. All right, turn to an elbow partner and share. Go ahead. And conversations to a close. Okay, so students, you've had a chance now to see what I identified as where there was an error. You've seen some model sentences now and had a chance to talk, and we've charted our thinking. So the thing that we're really focusing on today, or the thing we're going to go further into, is this idea of the use of the comma. And I'm gonna cheat and use his language so I get it exactly right, because there's people here that know a lot more about grammar than I do. I can hear from some of the answers you've shared. Using a comma and a coordinating conjunction to join two independent clauses. Conjunctions are connectors that link equal words, phrases, or clauses. Coordinating conjunctions cue readers in on a relationship between ideas. And so what we're looking at then is what we're taking into consideration is the idea of a simple sentence and a compound sentence, and how you might take two simple sentences in your writing and link them together. And so what we saw in the error, the student error, if we broke this down, we might notice that there's actually two separate thoughts. And you might have caught that in our observations. And if you did, you could reference that obviously on the chart. So we notice that there's two simple ideas here, but they're not connected. Typically, a student may even write these as two simple sentences or two quick thoughts. So then how would you take those two thoughts and make it what they call the compound sentence, right? And so it's getting into, and when students communicate, they communicate, oh, I get it, and they can oral language do compound sentences or take those two simple sentences and put them together, but they're not sure how that translates when you write it to paper. And so then you model what that might look like. And so you point out, notice here we've got one thought, and then a comma, and then a second thought. And then you start talking about what is this language. And you might see there was actually another one I didn't include that had another but in between. And so you had the three different use of that same word. And so you've got and, but. And so you point that out and come to it. And so then we go to the point that says, well, students, putting this together is something that happens quite frequently. And it's called FANBOYS. So when you take two simple sentences and put it together in a compound sentence, you put a comma in there with a fanboy, coordinating conjunction, and you put that forward. And so you see FANBOYS, you can introduce this as a chart, you could put this in play. And so you introduce that when students are looking for these kind of key words, it's an indication that there's two simple thoughts together and there's going to possibly be the need for a comma. Or if they had two simple statements and were encouraged to create a more complex sentence or a compound sentence, then they would go about it in this fashion. So putting that in order. So the use of FANBOYS and identifying FANBOYS, especially as we're putting together or putting our writing down to paper. So what that ends up looking like, maybe a different graphic representation for you, is you've got a sentence separated with a comma and then that coordinating conjunction, FANBOYS as we've called it, and then followed by a second sentence. So a different visual way of maybe breaking that down. And so there's lots of different ways and lots of different entry points to put that forward, but we go with that mentor sentence. So we use an actual errored sentence. We showed some model sentences, asked kids to look for patterns. I had you turn and talk, and so now what I'd like you to do is, again, turn and talk to your neighbor. What is something that you might do? Because probably when we read this, as we charted, we noticed something was funny about it, and maybe some people suggested to put things in different places. Now that we've talked about FANBOYS and a little bit further, what is the correction that you might make or the adjustment you might make to this sentence that will help it be read more smoothly? Okay? So go ahead and turn to an elbow partner and have a conversation around what would you do to this sentence. Go ahead. Okay, so what did you talk about? What did you share with the partner? What would you do here to this sentence?
Comma after the word salt.
Okay, so we're suggesting we'd put a comma here after the word salt. So if we go back and look, do we have a language that could stand as a sentence prior? And so we could read through that and talk through that. Now what I want you to think about as a teacher, why is this a good mentor sentence? Why this sentence versus any sentence? What do you think about this? What makes this a really good mentor sentence? Okay, so it's something a student definitely might say. Yeah?
It also has two coordinating conjunctions, so the students have to determine which of the two.
So we just talked about the fanboys, right? So instead of just giving them the one simple fanboy, we've got an and a so. And so there is the possibility that they could go, oh, we did fanboys? You betcha. Sand, comma, here we go, right? So, and that most likely would be the first thing. And so showing that even though with fanboys, that's the case, we've got to make sure we read it and make sure that where that statement ends and begins and moving forward. And so finding sentences like that and moving forward with that. And so what Jeff then would do, as he recommends in here, is you have kids then go back and look at their writings and look for where they maybe have simple sentences where they can find the opportunity to combine them into more of a compound sentence. All right? So the reason that I did this, and I'm going to have you go online for a second because I just want you to go in. So this brings about a little bit of the challenge of coming up with this strategy and why to consider this sentence mentoring in general. But if you go online, I'm asking you to go back to the writing section, back to that particular first 11 questions, but particularly look at question 4. And I just want you to talk with your elbow partner for a second around the connection between why I chose this particular mini lesson, if you will, or lesson to focus on compared to question 4. All right? And then I'm wondering your thoughts about that once you get a chance to kind of look at it. It'll be quick because I think you'll make a pretty quick connection. But just look at question 4 there and consider the little activity we just did. And I'm going to ask you to share, why do you think we did that and how did the two connect? Or how did it not connect based on what you saw? Go ahead.